Okay, we're continuing with the quote book here. It's called The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Peter Rogers, plus some additional stuff I've added since then. We're going to be doing some more in the letter A. And just one quick quote by Antisthenes. The most useful piece of learning is to unlearn that which is not true. Yeah, it's kind of, you're kind of taught a Walt Disney fairy tale version of the world when you're young. And then hopefully your parents have given you more of the truth. And then you have to then figure out what's real after that. Okay, Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, he lived from 1225 to 1274, and I think he's really a very great man because he sort of unified Aristotelian perspectives with Catholicism, sort of made reason and faith go together. And like I've said before in other lectures, you have to have both or everything goes into the toilet, because you can't have good health care, in my opinion, without having Bible-based view. And the reason I say that is I have a lot of experience in healthcare. It's just so much more profitable to rip people off and lie to them than it is to do right by them, that you have to put the patient on a pedestal and treat them with love. Otherwise, you're going to screw them over and rip them off. And that's why conventional healthcare has become a joke, because it's based on atheistic Darwinism. Okay, so Aquinas, he went to Paris, where the chairman of theology was Albertus Magnus, another Dominican. And the Dominicans are sort of famous for being really smart and academic. The Franciscans would criticize them. They saw them as too worldly, but the great thing Aquinas did was making Aristotle and reason part of the Catholic mentality, more so than it had been before. And he was different in his interpretation of Aristotle than Averroes was, okay? Let's see. Catholicism is sort of looser up front than Protestantism is, but Protestantism is kind of bleak, okay? It's very Bible-based. You go into a Protestant church, there's almost zero paintings or sculptures. And the problem is, how are you going to make a religion Bible-based when most people are illiterate, okay? Let's just be realistic. Most people are illiterate. And you'll say in the modern world, well, most people know how to read. Kind of. They're functional illiterate. So unless people voluntarily read a lot, they're a functional illiterate, even if they learned how to read in school. And it's just not that natural a thing for people to read. Okay, the great achievement, this is by Kenneth Clark. He made that documentary series and wrote the book, Civilization. He said, the great achievement of the Catholic Church was in harmonizing and civilizing the deepest impulses of ordinary ignorant people. It gives a structure to their life. The holidays, you got Christmas in the middle of the winter. You got Easter at the beginning of spring. All right, and you got something every Sunday, then you got all the feast days. It gives them a community and it structures their life. So Aquinas, I think this is a Michael Sugrue quote. Michael Sugrue is a great philosopher. He's like one of the best of the modern philosopher guys. Yeah, this is a quote by Michael Sugrue. Okay, he says, Aquinas was a synthesizer, a harmonizer, but he wasn't that creative or original. Aquinas' philosophy, of Thomism, because he's more Thomas from Aquinas than... So combine Greco-Roman philosophy with Christianity. That's a big statement right there. Catholicism has a lot more of ancient Greek culture in it than does Protestantism. Okay? Aquinas, here's what Michael Sugrue says. He says Aquinas baptized Aristotle and made him Christian. That's a big statement. Aquinas baptized Aristotle and made him Christian. And Aristotle leads to all kinds of good things. He was sort of smart, honest, nice, thoughtful, objective. Exactly what you want in a philosopher, okay? Before this, Christianity was saturated by Plato, as filtered through Augustine. The Medicis had, their scholar experts like Ficino, and Erasmus was also heavily influenced by Plato. So I go through all that because Plato was more of a mystic. If you look at the painting, the School of Athens, you have Plato pointing up to the sky, like sort of mysticism, versus you'll have Aristotle pointing down to the earth. He's more of a biologist, a down-to-earth guy. So Aristotle made Christianity more intellectual. Aristotle was more of a system builder than was Plato. And then Sugrue continues, scholastic writing was often in a question and answer format. Yeah, that's easy to read. Aquinas and the scholastics were a mini renaissance, a rebirth of classical learning. And really, Thomas Aquinas and Aristotelianism, they paved the way for what was most of the good stuff in the Renaissance. Okay. By the way, this guy Michael Sugrue is like one of the best philosopher guys of all time. He's got a lot of great lectures. So if you're interested in philosophy and you want to hear from somebody who's smart, who's nice, who's honest, Michael Sugrue, he's great. He's one of the all-time great professors. They used to be with that teaching company, thegreatcourses.com. Okay, here's a quote by George Santayana. The Roman Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism. Okay, let me scroll down. I'll go to some more of his quotes here. So this is Santayana continuing. He's a guy from Spain. The Roman Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism. Christianity arose out of Greek theology and Old Testament morality. Greek theology predominated in Catholicism. The Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism, whereas Old Testament morality predominated in Protestantism. Okay, the Catholics had a Renaissance, the Protestants had a Reformation. So just, I'll give you my 2 cents on it. Catholicism is a very pleasant way of life that anybody can fit into, and it creates an entire community. They got a whole school system, sports, feast days. It's nice. I knew lots of people in the Catholic tradition who were very happy with the whole thing. And they weren't that religious. Catholics in general are not Bible thumpers. There's Protestant as a whole bunch of different sects. The Puritans were Protestants, okay? There's some things I like about Protestants. They tend to be a little more intellectual. They tend to read more. I like the idea of the Pentecostals having all the great music. I think that's great. I actually think music, and the Lutherans I think were great too for promoting music. I think music should be promoted more and more. It's something everybody could enjoy. It makes people happy. That's good. Protestant, I think often, some of the different groups in Protestant emphasize too much pie in the sky, be good or you'll go to hell. And, people want to enjoy their life while they're here on earth, okay? I've read tons of Bible commentary, and I can tell you a lot of the theological stuff about, what is the communion wafer and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of contradictions from Bible version to Bible version, but there's not much contradiction or hardly any in, the teachings of Jesus. Be nice to each other, help each other, give each other the benefit of the doubt, forgive each other, okay? That's important stuff. Okay, Thomas Aquinas' family wanted him to join the family business. He didn't. He wanted to become a Dominican monk. They sent a prostitute to tempt him, and he chased her out of his room with a red-hot log of fire. And some funny pictures of that. Okay, let's see. He's one of the great intellectual heroes of the Middle Ages. People like Boethius, King Arthur, Charlemagne, Alcuin, and of course Abelard, and then Aquinas. Okay, he was an excellent scholar, okay, but I wouldn't call him that great a philosopher. Basic arguments about proofs for God, the unmoved mover, the uncaused causer, the undesigned designer. Okay, here's a typical Thomas Aquinas quote. Suppose a person entering a house were to feel heat on the porch and going further were to feel the heat increasing the more they penetrated within. Such a person would believe there was a fire in the house, even though they did not see the fire that must be causing all of the heat. A similar thing will happen to anybody who considers this world in detail. One will observe that all things are arranged according to their degrees of beauty and excellence, and that the nearer they are to God, the more beautiful and better they are. Thomas Aquinas. And I would say that the more you study biology, like really study it, how does the brain work? What is it doing? How does a cell function? How does the immune system work? The clotting system work? The human eye? The more incredible it is. It's so complicated and so fascinating and so brilliant. It didn't happen by accident. It's just way, 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 way too much. The smartest humans devote their entire life to studying one thing to win a Nobel Prize, and they can barely figure out one tiny little thing out of the millions of things there are out there to figure out. Okay, Thomas Aquinas. To one who has faith, no explanation is necessary. To one without faith, no explanation is possible. Aquinas continues. The most useful thing to know is the cause of things. Yeah, if you want to understand a domain, you got to know the causes of things. Okay, now the next speaker we're going to do, and now for something completely different. We're going to do Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt was a very bright lady. She lived from 1906 to 1975. And she came out of Germany, and she knew some of the head people in the things that were going on in the 1930s. And she actually dated a real famous German philosopher, Heidegger. And then here's some of her quotes, and they really catch what happened in a lot of ways in the 1930s. She said the trouble with Eichmann was precisely that there were so many like him, and that many were neither perverted nor sadistic, that they were and still are terribly normal. From this viewpoint of our moral standards of judgment, this normality was more terrifying than all the atrocities put together. So what I'm saying is, look at the time we live in right now. It's very much like the 1930s. The amount of evil happening in the world is going up, up, up through the roof. And look at all the self-righteous people who are promoting the evil, pretending they're doing something good. So they're behaving just like, the bad people did in the 1930s in Germany and in Russia. Okay, history is repeating itself, except I think it's actually, I'm sorry to say this, but it's potentially going to be worse because now there's technology, a lot of modern technology behind it that can make things a lot worse. The old just following orders. That's what people say all the time nowadays when they do bad things. Oh, I'm just following orders. Just following orders, acting like jerks. Okay, so here's a quote by Slavik Zizek. He says, the horror of communism and Stalinism is not that bad people do bad things. It's that good people do horrible things, and they think they're doing something great. Yeah, that's a frightening thing. And I can tell you, one of the frightening things of working in a hospital is almost no one knows anything. Now, I know you're going to look at me and say, how could I say that? What an arrogant statement. I'm telling you, it's the truth. What is the cure rate for diabetes and hypertension in a conventional medical hospital? 0. So what that means is no one either knows or cares enough to teach people low-fat vegan diet and give them a chance at a cure. And you're talking about giant medical centers with thousands of doctors and many thousands of other staff. Almost no one knows basic fundamental principles of disease. Almost no one knows basic fundamental principles of treatment for the common diseases. It's not a joke, okay? And that's what I mean by the amount of ignorance in our society. We laugh at the 1700s. We're just as stupid, okay? We have less of an excuse. There wasn't any, books or papers around. Nowadays, there's tons of books and papers that explain all this stuff, but nobody knows it because it's not taught in the standard curriculums. Okay, Hannah Arendt continues. Before mass leaders seize the power to fit reality to their lies, their propaganda is marked by an extreme contempt for the facts. An extreme contempt for the facts as such. For in their opinion, a fact only depends on who has the power to fabricate it. So basically, the definition of truth is who's the most powerful person that says it. And that's what truth has become in America. If big money says something, that's the truth. And if you don't like it, you can stick it as the attitude of big money, okay? Big money just says whatever it claims is the truth, and anybody who says otherwise can go screw themselves because they don't have any ability to get their message out, so they're wrong, okay? And that's basically saying might is right. So people don't understand it, but all this, lefty stuff is basically saying might is right. It's very evil. It's completely evil. But most people are too stupid to understand that. So the average dummy that you'll meet thinks leftism is good. They don't understand. It's just communism, okay? And it's evil, and it leads to mass, Jenner, side. Okay, here's Hannah Arendt. I am completely against feminism. I have no desire to give up my privileges. Yeah, feminism comes out of Satanism. If you study it, the goal of feminism is to destroy society and to sterilize these women, to get them to not reproduce. Okay, and so, the average dummy doesn't know that, but you start studying it, you will be shocked. It's all part of this process of trying to break up families, get rid of traditional families, get rid of Christianity, and enslave all the low IQ dumb shits, okay, and then force everyone else to have to go along with it, okay? All right, Hannah Arendt. The presence of others who see what we see and who hear what we hear assures us of the reality of the world and ourselves. Okay, Hannah Arendt continues. When we say that somebody is in power, what we actually mean is that this person is empowered by a certain number of people who will act in their name. The moment that the group from which the power originated to begin with disappears, his power also vanishes. Okay, so that's why, a lot of people, they'll look at Mussolini in Italy. Okay, once the Italian people kind of woke up to what a jerk he was, his power diminished. Hannah Arendt continues, the greatest enemy of authority is contempt. The surest way to undermine authority is with laughter. Okay, and actually that's something that is appropriate. If somebody is, abusing their authority, you should joke about what they're doing because otherwise it just gets worse. Okay, her next quote, okay, this is Hannah Arendt continued. She says, The most striking difference between ancient and modern sophists is that the ancients were satisfied with a passing victory of argument at the expense of truth, whereas the moderns want a more lasting victory at the expense of reality. Yeah, so that's why you see an incredible amount of gaslighting in mainstream media and on the internet. Look at nutrition. There are tons and tons of promoters of, absolute nonsense. Paleo, keto, carnivore, low carb. There is no science behind it. It is just a big, way to trick all the chumps. And all these low IQ Americans and Westerners are following down that path because they're too lazy and stupid to learn better. And the internet algorithms promote all the lies, okay? The sad truth is there's big money to be made by tricking all the pros. There's like no money to be done, almost no money done by helping them, okay? I do it because I have a big ego, okay? But I don't get any money for doing it. I know it's right, etc. All right, so anyways, here Hannah Arendt continues. The discoverer of the role of forgiveness in human affairs was Jesus of Nazareth. And that's a big statement, okay? And that's an important statement. That's one of the reasons why I'm a big believer in society, especially if you're going to have like America with all these different cultures, you definitely have to have Bible-based values. I would say, although all the founding fathers would say that too, because if you don't have it, you're going to have chaos, you're going to have tribalism, you're going to have endless problems. And when there's all these problems, what's going to happen? Big money's going to come in and use force and say, you must obey all these rules. And the rules are not going to be what you want. So you have to get along. Otherwise, power from above comes in and forces you into situations you don't like. There is no way around that. So that's why I've said it. Nobody listens to me, and I see where things are going, and I'm sad about it. But I still have a little bit of hope. I wouldn't be on the internet. I wouldn't write books if I didn't have any hope. But I am sad because basically good people tend to be stupid. And they tend to be disorganized. They don't tend to be united at all. And, step number one for having a brain and being able to understand current events is you have to realize most of the time things are not happening by random chance. They're happening because that's what big money wants to happen. Big money has the power to say, I want this to happen, and just, spend $1 billion and make it happen, okay? So lots of things that you think are happening just randomly. They're not. They're happening because big money's paying to make them happen. You need to know that, okay? And then you need to know also big money almost always lies because what it's doing is not nice, so it can't tell you the truth about it, so it tells you a lie, and you should learn not to believe the lie. A great quote by Carlyle was that there's always a good reason, some good-sounding reason that big money will put forth, but then there's the real reason, and you want to figure out what the real reason is because that will drive events. Okay, Hannah Arendt continues. Storytelling reveals meaning without the error of defining it. And then here she goes. Here's another big quote. Forgiveness is the only way to reverse the flow of history. That's a big statement, and it's true. I think Gandhi said something like that. If it's always an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth, everybody's going to end up blind and no teeth, okay? You have to have forgiveness in there. Look at Jesus with the adultery lady. He didn't say go commit more adultery. He said go and sin no more. In order to end tit for tat, the Hatfields and the McCoy feuds and stuff. Hannah Arendt continues. Love by its very nature is unworldly, and it is for this reason, rather than its rarity, that it is not only apolitical, but anti-political, perhaps the most powerful of all anti-political forces. Look at the way parents love a kid. They'll do a lot for a kid. But this is big stuff, and I remember this too from reading the book Quo Vadis, which contrasted the Romans with the early Christians. The Christians were just superior to the early Romans because this idea of forgiveness and love, it works. Think about your family, okay? You have to forgive all the annoying crap other family members do to get along, and it's worth it to do it, of course. Everybody's better off. Let's see what else. Hannah Arendt continues. The aim of totalitarian education has never been to instill convictions, but rather to destroy the capacity to form any. If everybody always lies to you, the consequence is not that you believe the lies, but that nobody believes anything anymore. I can tell you, I've known a lot of people from communist countries, and it's much worse than people think. It gets into their personalities and their minds, some of them. I've known people from communist countries who've told me things like, in a communist country, you have to lie all day long, every day. They said, if you don't lie, you don't survive. So it just becomes natural to lie all the time when you're in a communist country. And the reason that's an awful thing to say is America's becoming a communist country. And once it's communist, people are just going to keep lying all day long. There's a lot of people already who lie all day long, okay? You know, what are my pronouns? Give me a break. Okay. The sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. Most people just go along with whatever they're told. Big money says, here's the authority figure, you must obey. And that authority figure says, okay, go and do this or that, you know. Round up the Christians, throw them in the gulag. Okay. All right. Hannah Arendt continues. There is a strange interdependence between thoughtlessness and evil. Okay. Then she continues, one of the greatest advantages of evil was that it would turn any statement of fact into a question of motive. And you see that happening a lot. You know, if you had to ask yourself, what is the most powerful military weapon in the modern world? And I would say it's calling people names, okay? If leftism doesn't get its way immediately, they automatically start calling the person a name. You're, you know, phobic this, phobic that, you know, the R word or some other one of those words to just stigmatize their opponent because they don't have any, you know, moral foundation behind what they say or do. So they just have to call the other person names, and they need enough people to agree, oh, you've been called that name, you're bad, and, you know, exile that person, excommunicate that person. And until people are willing to say, hey, enough of this BS, society's going to keep on going downhill because it empowers evil and it takes the power away from the good people who want everybody to sort of be free and have a chance to have a decent life without being hassled all the time. Okay, Hannah Arendt continues. Okay, there's not much more she says. Men can only make sense of experience to the extent they can talk about it. Oh, that's another thing, too. One of the reasons why you see a lot of prevention of free, you know what, speech is because the evil doesn't want people to freely discuss things. When people freely discuss things, you know, two honest people who are trying to figure out the truth, they gradually work towards the truth. So if you can force them to shut up, they'll never get that chance. Most people can't think that well on their own to like figure everything out on their own. So by preventing them from talking and censoring things so they don't ever get to hear contrasting points of view, you keep them stupid, ignorant, and very easy to control. Okay. One last quote from Hannah Arendt, and that'll be it for today. Here it is. Power corresponds to the human ability not just to act, but to act in concert. Power is never the property of an individual. It belongs to a group, and it remains in existence only so long as that group keeps together. So that's the other reason why it's good to criticize groups that are behaving evil, because you've got at least a chance that some of their followers will say, look, the critic is right. They are behaving evil. We should not go along with this. So anyways, I hope that was helpful.